friends, and I stand in front of you as a big relief. I'm the last speaker of the day, right? So by saying that, I'm just trying to motivate you, hang on, right, a few more minutes. So what I'll be talking to you is about brain and behavior. Sounds serious, right? But I'll try to make it interesting for you, and I hope I do it. So this is what I'll be talking to you about, and I'll try to make it very relevant to your experience that you had by visiting Rasa Bera yesterday. So let's move ahead. So when you talk of the brain and the behavior, brain is pretty clear to you what it is, right? We talk of behavior, it is the effect, right? And you know that there cannot be an effect without a cause. So there is a cause and effect relationship that we share, and that's exactly where we are going to explore the brain-behavior relationship, right? Now, if you're going to understand behavior, you've got to understand one thing, that it begins with understanding, right? If your understanding is correct and appropriate, then you would be able to control, predict, and even try to modify behavior. I'll give you a very simple example. You've gone to school, tried a lot, right? You study very hard for your exams, but God knows what goes wrong, and you know the teacher is unable to understand what's written on the paper, right? And then you are the sufferer because that reflects in your grades, right? And now you've got to get it signed. That's another terrible thing, that you've got to walk up to your parents and show those grades that you have, right? But look at yourselves and just think, you do it beautifully. You know exactly when to hit upon your parents to get that paper signed, right? At what moment are they busy, or at what moment is their mood state, and when it will get the minimum reaction for a maximum effort that you've put in, right? And you plan it out so beautifully. And how do you do that? Because you have an excellent understanding of their behavior. And since you have this understanding, you can predict, control, and modify their behavior, right? And you do that. So the idea is you're successful because you have understood them well, right? So even in your real life situation, when you talk about changing behavior, modifying it, it's all about understanding that behavior. That fails, then everything fails. So at places where you worked it out so beautifully, scripted your behavior beautifully, but then you really get the brunt of your parents, it's because you fail to understand their behavior at that particular point of time, right? So therefore, what is very essential about behavior, when you're trying to change somebody's behavior, the understanding plays a very, very important role. That fails, everything fails, right? So there are some pictures that I showed you on that. Now, if I understand somebody's behavior, that doesn't bring an end to the story. I'll also have to find out how motivated they are for the change. Right? So at what level are they placed? Are they really interested to change, or are they not? Now, if they're not interested to change, you have to develop a different story with a different script. If they're interested to change or they're motivated for change, you have to plan it differently. So therefore, after understanding, what becomes more important is pitching in and trying to find out at what level is their motivation level for change. Now, when you talk of change and the brain says no. Right? That's very painful. Right? So you're sitting in your comfortable places, you already, some of you are, feeling like excited or anything, and we make a dramatic change here. It's not going to be appreciated by you in a big way, right? Because the brain does not appreciate change. It's difficult because, it requires rewiring. It requires looking at things from a different perspective and then trying to analyze and cope with it. And the brain really loves to work in an autopilot mode. It's always good that if I walk down, there are stairs, I get down, and everything is planned, and it has got a pattern, and it's easy to follow. So the brain is using less of resources, giving you maximum output, right? So therefore, change is something which doesn't go well with the brain. And the irony, you are the young change makers. So there's a lot of responsibility on you, right? We talk of change, but the brain is not welcoming change, and yet you are the young change makers. So you have a lot of task in front of you, right? A huge challenge in front of you. Now, if the brain is not accepting change, and yet I have to bring in change, I'll have to look into things differently, right? So what do? I go in a situation where I go for subtle changes. Changes which are very subtle, happen at a level which is very peaceful, is easily accepted. So therefore, you are not met with resistance. So you remember these games that you played? I suppose you did. There are two pictures given to you and you have to really find out where that change is, right? So the idea of putting up the picture is to tell you that more subtle the change is, easier is the acceptance, because you just don't know when you changed, right? So if I talk of subtle changes, I also need to tell you how you can do it. So if you look into it, these are some examples of how you can use nudges. Nudge is a concept which is very happening these days, and it talks of subtle changes you make in the environment and that changes behavior. Now the first picture that you look into, if you're walking into a door and you have these footprints like that, it will naturally drag you to look at that point or move in that direction, and you will use the sanitizer, which you normally would have forgotten if it is kept there. Change in the environment, very minimal. Impact from the environment, maximum, right? So worth doing it. So you have the second one where you can see that, if there is less of water, how you can actually use it for better purposes, reuse it for better purposes, right? So these are some pictures that I brought up for you, so as to give you an idea of how you can use nudges to make very impactful and meaningful changes. Now we move ahead. The next way to do it is that you can be creative, right? Something which is innovative, something which is out of the blue, right? And that actually catches attention, inspires you, motivates you, or makes you feel good that, let's do it. Now what's very interesting about creativity is that when you try to think of creative solutions, you put the problem in front of you, and then you start thinking, how can I be creative on that? And that's the first step of killing creativity, right? Creativity happens when your mind starts wandering. You allow the mind to wander, it's going to come back to you with better results. You're going to be more creative than when you are focused. The more focused you are, the less is your creative output, right? And therefore, it's always good that when you are thinking about a problem, let it go for some time. The brain will do its work, will connect all your experiences and the dots that it has got to connect with, and come up with some good solutions, right? So that's one way of how you can do it, right? So it's always good to allow your mind to wander. It tends to give you better results. That's the reason why when somebody is speaking, you're encouraged to be more attentive, not let your mind wander into creative spaces, right? But when you really have to come up with creative solutions, it's always good to be less focused on that, right? Next that you can do is, these are some solutions which I have brought up in front of you, is how you can come up with creative solutions. So if you look into the pictures, the one refrigerator that you see is made out of mud, right? It is known as Mitti Cool. It was very popular, and it's simple, innovative designs, creative ideas, and the output that you get from it is pretty impressive. And so similarly, you have some more pictures that you can see over there, and the one in which the person can see some movies if you create it with a cardboard box. So these are innovative solutions, right? And these solutions don't come when you're not thinking out of the box, right? So these are some solutions which I came up with. And with the last slide, I would really like to say is, if you want to make a change, be one amongst them, right? So if the brain is resisting change and the brain is not keeping up to, accepting change positively, a change can always be brought when you are one amongst them. When you perceive somebody to be one amongst you, you are more willing to listen, right? And therefore it becomes much more effective, rather than walking up to a space and saying, this is a solution I have for you and that is good for you, please accept it. Believe me, nobody is going to. So that was about the presentation that I have, and as I told you, I was a relief speaker for you, being the last speaker, and I suppose I stood up to what I promised, right? Okay, thank you so much.